What's up? Welcome to Nowstalgia. Dave here with my 2024 XXL Freshman List predictions. I've been doing this for 8 years. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm pretty good at this, honestly. I usually get over 50%, at least 50% of the lists correct. Frankly, it's been harder to predict the XXL Freshman class every year because hip-hop has continued to change and evolve lately, and the optics, the dynamics of what it means to be a rising force in hip-hop has continued to evolve and change, and thus the quote criteria to make such a list continues to evolve as well. I think more than anything, thinking about XXL, it's old news that the traditional press cycle is like necessary to really help launch careers, but the publicity from XXL freshmen is still very valuable. As we know, social media has really helped artists promote themselves, develop careers, develop fan bases, cultivate fan bases without the support of the traditional major label system. And TikTok has really improved discoverability for brand new artists, really for anyone, right? However, it's also harder than ever, arguably, to be discovered because the barrier to entry has never been lower. So XXL still has an important place. And to me, I always like the history, the idea of the concept of like the quote freshman class in hip hop because no other music genre can support something like this. So I think it's pretty fun to invest in and think about. And coming up with the best 10 people to make the list, it's still challenging. But frankly, I think it's more challenging nowadays just because there's less sure things. There's less like obvious picks. You know, just a few years ago, there were a lot of obvious people to throw in there. But now I think it's pretty interesting again because there's going to be a lot of people making the list that aren't super popular and aren't super well known, even if they have a quote hit. You know, they have some fans, some bubbling status. So it's pretty interesting these days. I'm going to go through my 10 picks as well as some artists that I think are certainly in the mix for sure. I got to say, it's one of the toughest years in a long time because, again, there's just not a lot of sure things. We're just going to jump right into it. I'm just going to go through who I think should make it and why, and we'll just go from there. And, of course, leave a comment. Let me know who you think should make it. Who do you like the best out of who I picked? Let me know. Again, it's a hard thing to make, and everyone has their own preference, so please let me know what you think. But we'll just kind of jump right in here. I think one of the clearest picks, and by the way, everyone I'm going to pick here is, quote, on the XXL voting for the 10th spot on their website. So it's everyone on my list is someone XXL themselves is clearly thinking about and is deemed, quote, eligible for the list. So we'll just get that out of the way. I think one of the obvious ones, probably the most obvious one, would be Forbats. 22 years old, out of Dallas, Texas. Recently signed to OVO Sound, recently signed to Drake. And that's, of course, because his hit single, Act 2, Date at 8, really kind of blew up on TikTok and then got an actual official Drake remix. The song peaked at number 7 on Billboard Hot 100. Forbats is about to release his debut EP on OVO, so he's still very much a freshman, which is a massive song under his belt. And, you know, he's kind of more of the trap soul hip hop. He's certainly melodic, not like the hardest rapper, but I think he still clearly fits the bill and is one of the clearest like guys on the rise to stardom here. Kind of a no-brainer. Next up, we'll go with someone who I also think is a no-brainer, but it's kind of on the other side of the coin, and that would be Veeze out of Detroit. Veeze is 30 years old, but he only signed to Warner last year in the lead up to his debut album, Ganger. And Ganger wasn't like a massive hit by any means, but it was a huge critical hit. Got a ton of critical acclaim, big rap critic artist for sure. And he debuted back in 2019, so it's not like he's been like popping forever, but it's been a little bit amount of time. But the breakthrough was clearly last year, so I think he certainly kind of fits the mix. And representing Detroit, I think, is an important scene to obviously recognize. And his trap style with like kind of very laid back, almost like mealy mouth flow. There's a unique side to Veeze, but he also is clearly representing that Detroit / like Flint sound. So I think he's another like pretty easy pick. Next up for me would be Cobain from the Bronx, 25 years old. Really made his name as a producer first, but XXL did put him on their website as someone you could select. And, you know, his single, Fisher, with Boy Swag, became a big hit on TikTok primarily because of a dance trend. And it's kind of like the preeminent song for the, quote, sexy drill subgenre of drill music. And, you know, we've been representing drill music on the list year after year because it continues to bring new stars into our lives. I mean, thinking about drill from New York, Lola Brooke made the list last year, right? But Cobain, you know, I think the fact that he's pretty integrated already as a producer, you know, he was with Drake with For All the Dogs, made a song with Central C. He's on the Pink Panthers album, signed the Irving Azoff's Redux version of Giant Music, now an independent outfit. Got several projects, but I don't know. I think Cash Cobain's kind of like a clear pick because he's definitely not a star. Like, he doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, but he's like clearly like moving and getting a lot of the big placements as a producer, and also really breaking out as an artist as well with Fisher, and he's got several projects out there on top of that. So I think he's another good pick. After that, we have two artists that were on the website in the past, didn't get picked, didn't make the list, and are actually eligible again. I was a little shocked about this one. That would be Kenny Mason, 29 years old, out of Atlanta. I thought he should make the list last year. I thought he should have made the list 2 years ago, to be honest, but he's apparently still eligible. I hope XXL picks him this year. I hope Kenny does it because he's not the most famous guy. So I think the look would still be helpful to him. And he also represents kind of like an alternative hip hop, bringing in some rock elements, bringing in some punk elements. Think of his Angelic Hoodrat album and the Supercut Deluxe version of that, and his Roughs mixtape as well, his most recent release. Full-length release before all those EPs he released last year. Very interesting artist. Not a lot of people doing stuff like him. I think it's important to represent these kind of like rap rock guys who he's still like a great rapper, like traditional rapper. Look at his song Hit. Like, he's a great rapper, but he brings in a lot of other elements. I think it's a really interesting thing you should try and acknowledge. They didn't pick Tizo Touchdown a few years ago when I advocated for that. Look what happened to him. Pick Kenny Mason. Someone else who I actually recommended they pick last year, who they didn't, would be Kashdami from the DMV. He's only 19 years old, so it makes sense that he didn't necessarily get picked in the past because he's still quite young. But he's been popping since around 2020, I'd say, and he's a trap artist. Already signed to Atlantic Records. He has 3 albums, 3 tapes out. He's got a lot of music out for someone at such a young age, and his song Reparations being quite the hit. So given his age, I think you just got to put him on there. I'm not like the biggest fan of him, per se, but I think the track record, given his age, it's consistent body of work over several years at this point. I think it's pretty justified. Someone who I think is actually an awesome pick for XXL because she's popping at a really great time would be Bankz out of Philly. She's only 19 years old, signed to APG. And of course, her hit single, Tell Your Girlfriend. You've seen the TikTok dances. I know you've watched those. That song has peaked at number 58 on Hot 100, but she only has 1 EP and a bunch of other singles, so she's still very much in that freshman mix. Tell Your Girlfriend, talk dance aside, pretty like fun song. Like, she has like a nice mix of like melodic like pop rap. She has some other viral songs as well on top of that. It's not necessarily a one-hit wonder situation. Yeah, I think like this is like perfect timing for her, and she's kind of a no-brainer. And at this point, I've said a lot of these people are, quote, like no-brainers or easy picks, but like they're not super famous artists, right? So it's not like past few years where there were people that were a lot more mainstream already that were clearly going to make the list. It's not quite the case this year, obviously. Like Bankz, Kashdami, Kenny Mason, Cash Cobain, Veeze, Four Bats. Are any of them really famous? I would say no. And that's going to continue for the rest of my list. Next up for me would be Rich Amiri out of Boston, 20 years old. His song One Call peaked at number 60, 200 million plus on Spotify already. I believe that's the biggest hit out of anyone on here. That and Four Bats is Act 2. He signed Internet Money Records, get some Cole Bennett representation. 3 projects out, another kind of trap artist. Kind of interesting to represent Boston. Like, we don't get a lot of Boston rappers. Who was the last person to really make a lot of noise since like Cousin Stiz and Michael Christmas? It's been a minute. And even if I think his sound doesn't really sound like the Northeast per se, it's a bit more Southern, I think, but still, cool pick. The rest of my picks, I think these are ones that could go either way. This is kind of where I landed because, again, I think it's kind of hard. I landed on Baby Drill, 22 years old, from Atlanta. Pretty traditional Atlanta street trapper. Signed to Sony. He's got a lot of projects out already. Connected to 21, connected to Nudie, Quavo. Like, he seems pretty established in like that Atlanta mainstream. Rising quickly. Seems like a pretty clear pick if they go that route. I know he's had some legal issues, so that always clouds your selection to the list, so we'll see. Also from Atlanta would be Hunxho, 24 years old, signed to 300 Entertainment, another trap guy. Got like 8 projects out there. He opened up for Lil Baby on tour last year. Seems to be pretty established in the Atlanta scene, so another one where I don't know if they pick Baby Drill and Hunxho, maybe they pick just one of those guys, but they both make sense. Also from Atlanta would be Karrahbooo. She's 27 years old, but she's a new artist. She really only has like 4 songs out. Biggest hits probably Box the 40, and of course she's signed to Lil Yachty's Concrete Boys Collective. She used to be Lil Yachty's assistant before she started rapping. This is, I think, a really cool pick for a freshman because even though she's connected to Yachty, someone who's established, she has very little music out right now. So it's like we're very much at the beginning of this career, right? Similarly, someone who she made a song with, Splash Brothers, she collabed with Anicia, very similar, like rising, like brand new artists. So I would not be shocked if either one of those make it, but I'm going to go with Karrahbooo here. And that's my 10. I'm just thinking of other people in the mix here. Little Mabu, I'm not even sure how you say it. He's 19 from New York, white guy, signed to Empire. Maximal Disrespect, Minimal Disrespect, where that song is. Peaked at number 47, TikTok guy. Don't know how serious we're going to take him, so I'm not selecting him. He was on the website. We'll see. Want to shout out Skilla Baby. I also want to shout out all like the Cardi clones, the Yeet clones, like Jadis and Netspend and Ian. I don't think any of them are going to make it, but they do represent a certain scene in the rage music, alternative hip hop, SoundCloud rap 10.0, etc. I'm not picking any of them, but I've got to acknowledge them. Also, I want to acknowledge the Brooklyn Drill Trio 41, comprised of Kyle Rich, Jen Carter, and Tafta. All three of those guys were actually listed on the website as someone you could vote for as individuals. Of course, XXL does not pick groups, just can't, logistically speaking with the cover. As a result, I don't know how you can pick one of those guys without picking all three, to be honest. Like, they're clearly like the most eventful thing to happen in New York drill music alongside Cobain. But I don't know how you pick one but not the other. I feel like they're just not going to make the list, and Cobain makes the list. But I wanted to acknowledge them because if they were not in a group, some of them would probably make it if they were popping the same way. But that's my list. To recap, here are my 2024 XXL Freshman List predictions. Number 1, Four Bats from Dallas, Texas. Number 2, Veeze from Detroit. Number 3, Cobain from the Bronx. Number 4, Kenny Mason from Atlanta. Number 5, Kashdami from the DMV. Number 6, Bankz from Philly. Number 7, Rich Amiri from Boston. Number 8, Baby Drill from Atlanta. Number 9, Hunxho from Atlanta. And number 10, Karrahbooo from Atlanta. Leave a comment, let me know who you think should make the XXL freshman class. And make sure you watch the full video to find out why I picked who I did. And of course, make sure you come back once the list gets officially announced by XXL, in the middle of June, as they always do. And I'll react to who actually did make the list, see how I did. And yeah, we'll talk about it then. And of course, for more rap reviews throughout the year, see the playlist link below and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.